Hi everyone, it's Rax bringing you another leveling guide for the launch of Diablo 4. This time we're going to talk about the Necromancer. Yesterday I released my first guide for Sorcerer. I read all the comments. I got some nice feedback from you guys on ways I can improve. I'm going to try to implement that all into this video. So we're going to go through step by step and build it exactly as we did last time because you guys seem to like that. But the first thing that we need to decide before we start a Necromancer leveling build guide is we have to answer a philosophical question. Do we want to use the skellies or not? And let's talk about this, okay? So, skellies. In the beta, the skellies might have been the greatest skill in the game. It's up there with Chain Lightning and Hydra. Just absolutely decimated everything, killed everything. They were gods. They were an auto-include. A 10 out of 10. Then the Server Slam came out. They nerfed the skellies, and they nerfed them tremendously. So my build guide on Ashava, it was really good, except for the fact that it took the skellies. So the skellies were like a 0 out of 10, completely unusable. So then Blizzard, during the Server Slam, released a hotfix, and they said, we're sorry, and we're going to rebuff the skellies. And the new power that they ended at for me was about a 4 out of 10. I started a brand new Necro with skellies, going a Summoner Necro, and I played through the entire game again just to see how they were. They were better, but they were still dying, and I felt more like a babysitter than the commander of the undead, right? So the question becomes, should we take the skellies in our leveling guide? So let's consider a few things. The first thing is, if we take the skellies, it takes a skill slot on your bar. So that's 1 skill down, so we can only use 5 for leveling up. The second thing is we have to generate corpses to summon our skellies and to use the little heal that keeps them alive. Didn't know if you have full skellies, if you use another one, it summons like a little priest that does some healing for them. It's very minor, but it's something. So this means we have to figure out a way to generate corpses on the boss, and then we would have to spend those corpses on skellies rather than spending it on something else, like Corpse Explosion. Then we would have to take 6 passives to keep them alive. I don't think you can get away with keeping them alive unless you have some kind of specific build around keeping them alive, which seems like a lot of work. And finally, on the bosses, they are guaranteed to die. At least once, maybe twice. So that means you're going to have to resummon your whole army twice in a boss fight, and that's a lot of corpses. If you're not catching my drift here, in my guide, I am going to recommend that you do not use the skellies. Now, some people will say that eliminates the entire purpose of being a Necromancer. Well, I do have a compromise for you. I did find a way to include Golem in the build, even though I wasn't too keen on doing that. So we will be summoning something, so we're not just like a nerfed sorcerer. But I will tell you, I think this Necromancer build is absolutely going to crush leveling. When I was leveling in the Server Slam, people were watching me. I used a build exactly like this, and I just erased the game effortlessly. So I think Necros and Sorcerers are probably going to have the easiest leveling experiences, along with Rogue. So I'm going to recommend no skellies. If you're super upset at me, just go ahead and leave me a comment and tell me how terrible this build is with no skellies, and maybe if I'm feeling nice, I'll make another leveling guide centered around the skellies for you. Let's go into this build, though, and I think this build is going to stomp this game. So we're going to go full Bone here, and Bone Spear is one of the absolute best skills in the entire game. I had a list going into the Server Slam of a bunch of skills that I thought Blizzard was going to nerf. Blizzard nerfed every single one of them. The only one that they didn't nerf was Bone Spear, and they actually buffed it, which is hilarious. So if they don't nerf it on like the day 1 patch, Bone Spear is going to cruise through the game. We'll take Bone Splinters because Bone Splinters synergizes with the Bone build. And then we will take Bone Spear. And we're going to take Supernatural Bone Spear. It makes them auto-vulnerable. It does huge damage. It pierces through the enemies. It goes through the entire room, has really good AoE. It creates little shards which do additional damage. Bone Spear is just the GOAT. It's just incredible. And then we're going to take Initiate's Bone Splinters for more critical strike chance. When we get to this level, they nerf the crap out of Corpse Explosion. So what we're going to do is we're going to take Corpse Explosion. Corpse Explosion is still really good. I worked with it in the last Server Slam and the patch after. Corpse Explosion is still really good. We need something to spend our corpses on. And since we're taking the Golem, that'll kind of be our defense. We're going to opt to drop Blood Mist. I usually don't like to go with like no defense in a build, and Blood Mist would be the choice. But if we want to include a minion, we'll take the Golem, and the Golem will tank for us, and the Golem will give us some really nice DR. And I think this build is going to crush anyway, so I think you'll be fine. But we don't get the Golem until 25. So we can use Blood Mist for 17 levels. So let's go ahead and pick it up. We don't have to take all the other stuff, but let's use it for 17 levels. That from here, we're going to max Bone Spear, and then we are good to go and pick up Decrep. And this is going to help us a lot later on with our ultimate, but it's going to slow enemies and it's going to make them do way less damage. So we're going to keep this up on bosses. They're not going to do anything to us. From here, we'll pick up the further path down Corpse Explosion. Now you can choose either one. You don't have to do Blighted Corpse Explosion. You could go Plagued. But Blighted leaves a big pool of poison that just does a ton of shadow damage, and it's really nice. So I guess it's not really poison, it's shadowy stuff. Anyway, it's incredible. And yeah, if you didn't try this, believe me. The problem here is Corpse Explosion kind of overlaps with Bone Spear. They're both kind of AoE coverage skills. But I think Corpse Explosion on packs, you could throw one Bone Spear, get a corpse explode it, and that's pretty much it. You can start walking away, and believe me, you need to start walking away as quickly as you can because Necros don't have very good movement. Probably have the worst movement in the game. And then on bosses, it's like passive DPS. You throw a Bone Spear, we're going to have ways to generate corpses. When you generate those corpses, then you can blow up with Corpse Explosion and get some passive DPS in with your Bone Spear. I think they're going to die very quickly. So now that we have our Corpse Explosion pumped up, we're going to take Imperfectly Balanced, which is going to give us a ton of damage. Then since we're doing a bone build, we're going to take Serration. It's going to give us a huge critical strike chance. Then we're going to take this cute little passive, Hewed Flesh. Now later on, we're going to have this maxed. So what it does is Lucky Hit, which lucky for us is 50% for Bone Spear. That's very high. So 50% of the time, we're going to have a 12% chance when we hit them to generate a corpse, but it's doubled for bosses. So 12 doubled on bosses, which is where we want it, is 24, but the lucky hit is 50, so back down to 12. So what that means is 1 in 8 Bone Spears is going to spawn a corpse on the boss. So you're Bone Spearing, corpse spawns, corpse explode. Now they're standing in a pool of poison while you throw Bone Spears. There'll be another corpse, blow it up, and you're going to have essentially both skills running all the time. That's the beauty of Hewed Flesh there. Okay, so after we pick up that, now we can get our ultimate. Now, Army of the Dead, I think, does more damage, but Bone Storm, I mean, we're going the bone build. I mean, let's go Bone Storm, and Bone Storm has good synergy, with the Golem. So let's go Bone Storm. And at 25, by the way, we got our Golem. So this point of Blood Mist is out, and it goes into Hewed Flesh. So now we're up to 8, and we got to get the last skill later. From here, we're going to pick up Golem Mastery. We need to keep our Golem alive. And I guess now would be a good time to show you. When you go over here with your Book of the Dead, you might be wondering what we're going to do. We're going to sacrifice our Skeletal Warriors for 5% crit. For our Skelly Mages, we're going to sacrifice them for 15% vulnerable damage, which is a huge multiplier. And we don't want to take that skill on our bar. We don't want to take the 6 passives, etc. So we're going to sacrifice both of them. But we will take the Blood Golem, and they're going to take 15% of the damage for us and tank for us. So now life is just going to be pretty good with our little friend there. And now we've got all of the upgrades from the Book of the Dead. Okay, from here, now that we have a good way to summon corpses on the boss, now we're going to pump up Corpse Explosion. That's kind of the last way for us to do a ton of damage on the boss. And now we should be able to take our passive. Bone Skills deal 1% increased damage for every point of essence you have above 50 on cast. So what we're going to do is we're going to get our essence to 100 with Bone Splinters and throw a Bone Spear. And if we keep doing that, we're going to have a huge damage increase. We're going to crush. We're also going to have a legendary power, which is one of the best ones in the game, which is also going to give us a bunch of damage. From there, we'll pick up the last thing in Hewed Flesh, and now we have a decision to make. The rest of these passives, if you disagree with me, you could do them in a different order if you want, or change them up slightly. But I feel personally responsible for your quality of life more than anything. So there are a ton of damage nodes and passives that you can take. The thing that I'm going to take for you first is the defense. Because I already took away your Blood Mist. Yes, I did give you a Golem, but there's not that much defense built into here. So the way you get defense is standalone. Your damage reduction is increased by 18, reduced by 2% for each active minion. You just take 16% less damage. I think that's going to be the best option for you, and that's really the only defensive passive I'm going to give you. You say, Rax, that's stupid. I'll take that later. I'm a god. Fine. But you're asking me, I want to give you the DR first. I want you to survive. I don't want you to fail a single boss fight. From there, we're going to take just a bunch of passives that are just going to increase our damage. You can take them in different orders. I sat there calculating with my protractor, calculating the parallaxes of the angle of the sun and the moon and which one gives you a little bit more. I mean, I don't know. They're all pretty good. Don't worry too much about it. This one's cool because it increases the power of your sacrifices. When we sacrifice them, you know, this kind of felt bad. This gives you 60% more. 60% more on 15% damage. 60% more on 5% is actually pretty good. So I was kind of surprised by that one. From here, we'll pick up Grim Harvest, and we're just doing that to take Fueled by Death. 9% damage after you consume a corpse. Well, we're going to be corpse exploding pretty often. That's the only thing we spend our corpses on. So that's going to happen a lot. From here, we'll pick up Compound Fracture and go to Evulsion. How do you say it? Evulsion. This is going to give us 18% critical strike damage. Did you see how many places we took critical strike chance? It makes us a lot stronger. From there, I take Amplify damage. Amplify damage, we don't want to, by the way, I don't know how this happened, but I made a mistake here. You should pick up these upgrades right after you get your ultimate, because this is going to reset your ultimate. So like at 36 and 37, make sure you pick these up before we picked up the last huge flesh. Forgot about that one. Sorry, Decrepify, forgive me. Here I like to take Amplify damage. And the reason why is Amplify damage pretty much only applies on bosses and elites, because I'll be honest with you, I'm not going to run around and cursing every single monster that I see. That's a waste of time. But I will probably curse the elites and the bosses, opening up with them. And then this is going to give you essentially 9% damage on them, which is what really matters. It's a little bit more consistent. Now from here, I spent so much time looking at these two passives, Death's Embrace and Death's Reach. You would look at them and say, oh yeah, 12% increased damage to distant enemies. That's a no-brainer, Rax. You just stand up across the room and throw Bone Spears. Is that really what you do though? Because remember, you have Bone Storm. It circles around you and it circles around your golem. So you want to be close when you activate your ultimate. And also, your Bone Splinters are way more effective when you're close. So, but you will definitely throw Bone Spears from a distance. So there is value in this passive. Then there's this one, which is the opposite. Close enemies take more damage from us and deal less damage to us. That one's pretty good. But I'm not going to volunteer and go give the boss a hug that often unless my Bone Storm is up, am I? And so I thought about it. I'm like, okay, at least I'll put this passive at the back. And I think my final answer here on how I would play it is I would just run up to the enemies. I would run up to the elite. So I'm getting max value out of this if you have your thing up. And I would just take this for the additional damage and the reduced damage. I mean, if they're hurting you, just walk away. Just walk away, 5-head, and not a big deal. I think that's what I would do. Is that exactly the right answer? It's kind of hard to say. I spent a lot of time thinking about it, but I think it's actually better to go for close, pretty much to synergize with the ultimate and your generator. And then the last point, couldn't find a great way to put it, considered some different options. I think just consuming a corpse, giving you more essence, it's just more quality of life. It's just easier to throw Bone Spears. Okay, before I forget, I have I had it. I don't know where it is anymore. I can remake it real quick. The Necro stats. What stats are you looking for? All the basic stuff that you would think. Plus to vulnerable damage is really good. Plus to any bone skills. Plus to bone spear. Plus to corpse explosion. Intelligence is really good. Honestly, close or distant damage is good. You're not always going to go give them a hug, but maybe whenever you can, when the ultimate's up, you're going to get close. Either one of them would be really nice. You know, life and armor, that'll keep you alive. All the stuff that you would think normally. We do have them vulnerable a lot, and it's like a separate multiplier. So definitely get the plus to vulnerable. That's going to be huge. So that was a big thing that I missed in my last video, is not talking about the stats. So now let's talk about the legendary aspects. So I'm going to say this in every video. I'm only going to give you an aspect that drops in the Codex of Power. Codex of Power means you go kill a dungeon, you have this power forever, you go to the occultist, you can put it on your stuff. If you watch my video, the biggest leveling mistake, don't put it on your weapons unless you're going to have your weapon for a long time. It's going to cost you a lot of materials. Splintering aspect. Look at how godly this is. Bone Spear's primary attack makes enemies hit beyond the first vulnerable. So it's going to make everything vulnerable. Then Bone Shards from the Bone Spear, it's going to deal 75 because it's 50%, because it's the Codex of Power, which is the minimum value, but you put it on the amulet, you get a 50% bonus. 50 divided by 2 is 25, so it's 75. 75% damage to vulnerable enemies, and you pierce them. This is incredible. If they don't nerf Bone Spear, and you can go pick up this aspect, you are going to crush it. So it's somewhere in the dry steppes. Hopefully we'll figure it out. It just says somewhere in the campaign. Hopefully we can figure out exactly which dungeon it is. Just run around the dry steppes, find it, get this, and I mean, that's it. I mean, you already won. You're just going to be cruising. Edge Masters is good for like every single class. You're going to see this recommended all the time. You get 10% increased damage based upon your primary resource. We're going to be throwing at max resources, right? Because remember our ultimate or our capstone passive, 1% for every damage above 50. So that synergizes with this incredibly. Expectant is good for all classes. Basic skills increase the next core skill by 30%. Then there's another really nice one. The aspect of the Torment. Critical strikes with bone skills. Remember all that crit stuff that we took? We're going to crit a lot. Increases your essence regeneration by 20% for 4 seconds. I mean, you might have this up all the time. If you're DPSing all the time, I think you're going to be critting a lot. Another cute one is the Wind Striker. I mean, Necros are slow. So if you want to go do this dungeon, and you got to farm XP anyway, you got to get the Codex of Power anyway, you got to get your renown anyway. Might as well go do the Shivta Ruins, where critical strikes give you 8% movement speed for 6 seconds. You might have this up all the time. Necros are slow. And here's the gems as well. Emeralds will do obviously damage to vulnerable enemies. We have huge crit hit strike chance, and everything's vulnerable. So we got to take that. This is just going to give you maximum life, and this is going to give you a bonus to armor. I am quite sure, barring a colossal day one nerf, which I am not expecting from Blizzard, I think this is going to be one of the smoothest leveling builds of any class. We didn't take that much defense because there wasn't that much defense to take, but you got your trusty little golem taking 15% of the damage for you. Your ultimate is shared with your golem. You can just go give the boss a hug. He's going to die. And I think the synergy between Bone Spear and Corpse Explosion, I think you're going to find the game just a breeze. I think even a breeze on World Tier 2, especially with this legendary power. Make sure that you go get this in Act 3 in the dry steppes. This is my Necro leveling build. I kind of wish I was starting Necro. I had probably the most fun playing this in the Server Slam. Just obliterated the game. Again, leave a comment. Give me some feedback. I'm listening. I read the comments from yesterday on the Sorcerer video. Hopefully I made some changes here that you guys liked. And we'll do the next 3 classes. And there's going to be many more videos coming, not only for launch, but I'm going to be maining this game. I'm going to try to teach you everything about this game, all the metas, the leveling, the end game, all the tricky mechanics, all the cool strategies. I'm going to be there for it. I'm going to try to teach it to you. Thank you.